3 weeks had passed since the meeting at Harmony Point. The galaxy was changing, and not in a good way. Admiral Hyun-Woo Choi stood in the command center of the human military base on Earth. Screens all around him showed what was happening across the galaxy. The news was bad, and it was getting worse every day. "Show me the Silmari homeworld again," he said to his aide, Intelligence Officer Ji Young-kang. The main screen changed to show a planet that had once been beautiful. The Silmari were made of living crystal, and their world had been covered in crystal forests that sang in the wind. Now huge Velkari mining ships floated above the planet like metal vultures. The crystal forests were gone. In their place were deep holes in the ground. "They're calling it resource optimization," Ji Young said, her voice bitter. "The Velkari say the crystals are needed for galactic communication networks." "What they're not saying is that those crystals were alive," said Dr. Min-ho Yoon, the team's technology expert. "Each one was a Silmari ancestor. They just destroyed thousands of years of history." Admiral Choi clenched his fists. "Show me the Hydrian worlds." The screen changed again. This time it showed planets that had been covered in oceans. Now the oceans were shrinking. Massive pumps sucked water up to Velkari ships in orbit. On the surface, Hydrian cities sat empty as the water levels dropped. "The Hydrians are refugees now," Ji Young reported. "Billions of them are looking for new homes, but most worlds don't have enough water to support them. The Velkari are selling the water to dry worlds at high prices," Min-ho added. "They're making a fortune." Admiral Choi turned away from the screens. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had seen war and peace, victory and defeat. But this was different. This was not war. This was slow murder. "Sir," Ji Young said quietly, "we're getting reports about Velkari ships near our colony worlds." "Which ones?" "All of them." The Admiral felt his blood turn cold. 17 human colony worlds. Each one home to millions of people. Each one now being watched by Velkari warships. "Are they doing anything?" he asked. "Not yet. They're just watching, waiting." Admiral Choi knew what they were waiting for. They were waiting for humanity to give in, to accept the new rules like everyone else had, to bow down and give up their rights. His communication device buzzed. A priority message from New Busan, one of humanity's most important colony worlds. "Sir, this is Captain Daewon Lee." The voice was tense. "We have a situation here." "Report, Captain. Velkari ships just arrived in our system. 12 heavy cruisers and a command ship. They're demanding to speak with our governor immediately." "Admiral." Choi closed his eyes. It was starting. "Put me through to the colony," he said. The screen changed to show the bridge of Captain Lee's ship. Behind him, through the windows, Admiral Choi could see the beautiful blue and green world of New Busan. It looked peaceful. It looked safe. It looked doomed. "Captain, what are their demands?" Admiral Choi asked. "They want the planet evacuated in 48 hours, Captain Lee said. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed anger. "They say New Busan has been selected for mining operations. All 200,000 colonists need to leave. Where are they supposed to go? The Velkari don't care. They just want them gone." Admiral Choi felt something break inside his chest. These were not soldiers. These were families, children, old people who had built new lives on New Busan, people who had done nothing wrong except be human. "Captain, how many ships do you have?" 6 patrol ships and 2 frigates. Nothing that can fight a Velkari cruiser. And they have 13 ships. "Yes, sir." The math was simple. 8 human ships against 13 Velkari ships. Ships that were bigger, stronger, and better armed. It would not be a fight. It would be a massacre. But Admiral Choi was thinking about more than numbers. He was thinking about the message this would send. If the Velkari could take New Busan without a fight, they would take other worlds. One by one, they would destroy everything humans had built. "Captain, I want you to prepare your ships for combat," he said. Everyone in the command center stopped what they were doing. They stared at the Admiral. "Sir," Captain Lee said carefully, "we can't win this fight." "I know," Admiral Choi said, but we can make them remember it. Before anyone could argue, another communication came in. This one was from Ambassador Tae-ho Kim, still at Harmony Point. Admiral, I need to speak with you privately, the ambassador said. Admiral Choi moved to a private communication room. Ambassador Kim's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired and older than he had 3 weeks ago. Admiral, I'm about to do something that will change everything, Kim said. What do you mean? I'm going to make a statement. A public statement that will be broadcast across the galaxy. After I do this, there will be no going back. Admiral Choi studied the ambassador's face. What kind of statement? The kind that tells the galaxy what humanity really thinks about bullies. The Admiral nodded slowly. Do it. Are you sure? Once I make this statement, they'll come after us with everything they have. They're already coming after us, Admiral Choi said. At least this way, they'll know we're not going quietly. Ambassador Kim smiled for the first time in weeks. Good. Give me 1 hour, then prepare for war. The communication ended. Admiral Choi returned to the command center. Ji-young, I want you to send a message to all human military commanders, he said. Code Black, prepare for immediate action. Ji-young's eyes widened. Code Black was the highest alert level. It meant war was coming. Sir, are you sure about this? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Exactly 1 hour later, screens across the galaxy lit up with an emergency broadcast. Ambassador Kim sat at a simple desk, with the flag of Earth behind him. He looked directly into the camera. Citizens of the galaxy, he began, his voice calm and clear. My name is Tae-ho Kim, and I speak for humanity. 3 weeks ago, we came to Harmony Point seeking peace and cooperation. We offered our friendship to the galaxy. We offered to share our knowledge and our resources. He paused, and his expression hardened. Instead, we found a galaxy ruled by fear. We found smaller species being robbed of their homes, their history, their very lives. We found a system where might makes right, and where the strong prey on the weak. Across the galaxy, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. The Velkari Empire has given humanity a choice, Kim continued. Submit to their rule, or face the consequences. They believe that because they have bigger ships and more weapons, we will bow down like everyone else. His voice grew stronger. They are wrong. Humanity did not claw its way to the stars to kneel before tyrants. We did not cross the void between worlds to watch innocent people suffer. We did not join this galaxy to be silent when evil calls itself law. He stood up, and the camera followed him. So let me make humanity's position clear to everyone listening. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not submit to unjust laws. We will not stand by while the weak are crushed by the strong. He looked directly into the camera, and his eyes were like steel. The Velkari Empire wanted to know what humanity is capable of when our backs are against the wall. They are about to find out. We came to you in peace, seeking partnership. You chose to see us as cattle to be managed. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than any shout. You have gravely miscalculated what humanity is capable of. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, the silence lasted for exactly 10 seconds. Then chaos erupted. Emergency meetings were called. Military alerts went out. Species that had been quiet for centuries began asking questions. And in the dark spaces between stars, ships that had been disguised as merchants began powering up weapons that should not have existed. The peace talks were truly over now. What came next would reshape the galaxy forever. The giant space station called Harmony Point floated in the dark between stars. It was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. Ships from 47 different worlds were docked to it like metal flowers on a steel tree. Each ship looked different. Some were long and thin like needles. Others were round like balls. A few looked like they were made of crystal that glowed with soft light. Ambassador Tae-ho Kim stood at the window of the human ship. He watched the alien vessels and felt small. Humans had only joined the Galactic Consul 5 years ago. They were the newest members, the youngest species in this old club of star-traveling races. Sir, the meeting starts in 1 hour, said Dr. Sora Park. She was the human team's expert on alien cultures. She had spent years learning how to talk to beings that looked nothing like humans. Teho nodded. Are you ready for this? As ready as we can be, Sora said. But I have a bad feeling about today. Captain Daewon Lee joined them at the window. He was in charge of the small human fleet that had brought them here. Only 12 ships, tiny, compared to the massive fleets of the older races. The Velkari have been acting strange, Daewon said. Their ships are in attack formation, not peaceful formation. Teho frowned. The Velkari Empire ruled most of the galaxy. They were tall, gray-skinned beings with forearms and eyes like black stones. For 2,000 years they had kept peace between the species. But their peace came with a price. They made the rules and everyone else followed them. Maybe they're just being careful, Sora said, but she didn't sound like she believed it. The 3 humans made their way through the station's halls. The gravity here was set to standard galactic level, which felt heavy to humans. The air smelled of different atmospheres mixed together. It was not pleasant. They passed groups of aliens. The blue-skinned Hydrians moved in groups, water dripping from their gill slits. The crystal people called Silamari floated past, their bodies ringing like bells with each movement. The Wanderer clans looked almost human, but their skin was silver and their eyes were too large. All of them looked nervous. The main meeting hall was enormous. It could hold representatives from all 47 member species. The Velkari sat at the center, on a raised platform. Their leader, High Regent Vexthara, was 9 feet tall and wore robes that seemed to move by themselves. Humans had been given seats in the back, far from the center. It was not an accident. In the Galactic Consul, your seat showed your importance. Humans were not considered important. Welcome, members of the Consul, Vexthara's voice boomed through the hall. The Velkari didn't move their mouths when they spoke. The words came from speakers in their throats. Today we discuss the future of our galaxy. Teho felt his stomach tighten. Something was wrong. This was supposed to be a routine meeting about trade routes and resource sharing. But Vexthara sounded like she was announcing a war. For too long we have allowed inefficient use of galactic resources, the High Regent continued. Small worlds hold valuable materials, while larger, more advanced civilizations lack what they need. Murmurs spread through the hall. The smaller species looked worried. The larger ones, the ones allied with the Velkari, looked pleased. Therefore, the Velkari Empire announces new resource allocation protocols, Vexthara said. All mining rights will be redistributed based on a species' ability to use resources efficiently. The hall erupted in whispers and worried sounds. Tai-Ho felt his blood turn cold. This was not resource sharing. This was theft made legal. An old Hydrian representative stood up. His blue skin was pale with fear. High Regent, our water worlds have been in our care for thousands of years. Your people need to understand their place, Vexthara cut him off. The Velkari Council has decided. Water worlds will be managed by those who can use water for the benefit of all. The Hydrian sat down, defeated. Around the all other small species looked at each other with fear in their eyes. A Silmari representative tried to speak. Their voice was like wind chimes. Our crystal formations are not just resources. They are our ancestors, our history. They are minerals, Vexthara said flatly. They will be harvested efficiently. Teho could not stay quiet anymore. He stood up. The movement felt loud in the sudden silence. High Regent, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. With respect, this violates the agreements made when species joined the Consul. We were promised protection of our sovereign rights. Every eye in the hall turned to him. Teho felt very small, but he did not sit down. Vexthara's black eyes fixed on him. Ambassador Kim, is it, the human representative? Yes, High Regent. Humans have been members of this Consul for exactly 5 years, 4 months and 12 days, Vexthara said. You are children playing in a game older than your civilization. You do not understand how galactic politics work. I understand. That agreements should be honored, Teho said. A sound like laughter came from the Velkari section. It was not a pleasant sound. Your species discovered faster than light travel 40 years ago, Vexithara said. We have had it for over 10,000 years. Your world has one star system. We control hundreds. You bring 12 ships to our gathering. We have fleets of thousands. What makes you think you can question our decisions? The hall was completely silent now. Even the air recycling system seemed to have stopped humming. Because those decisions affect innocent people, Teho said quietly. More laughter from the Velkari. But Teho noticed something else. Some of the other species were looking at him with something that might have been hope, or maybe admiration. He could not tell. The resource protocols are final, Vexithara announced. Any species that cannot adapt to the new reality will find their Consul membership reconsidered. She did not say the word removed, but everyone understood. One by one, the representatives of the smaller species stood and agreed to the protocols. The Hydrians agreed to give up their water worlds. The Silmari agreed to let their crystal ancestors be mined. The Wanderer clans agreed to give up their trade routes. Each agreement came with the same defeated tone. Each species looked smaller after they spoke. Finally, only one species had not agreed. And the humans? Vexthara asked. Teho looked around the hall. Sora was watching him with worry in her eyes. Daewon had his hand near his communication device, ready to call their ships. The human delegation needs time to consider this proposal, Teho said carefully. There is nothing to consider, Vexithara said. You will agree, or you will face the consequences. Then we need to understand what those consequences are. The High Regent's eyes seemed to glow darker. Your species controls 17 colony worlds. It would be unfortunate if they experienced difficulties with it, with their protection. It was a threat. Clear and simple. Teho felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear. Something else. Something that reminded him of his grandfather's stories about the old wars on Earth. We will give you our answer tomorrow, he said. You have until the end of this session, Vexithara replied. Choose wisely, Ambassador Kim. The galaxy is vast and dangerous for those without friends. The session ended with formal words about cooperation and peace. But everyone in the hall knew that the old peace was broken. The Velkari had shown their true face, and it was not the face of protectors. As the representatives filed out, several of them passed near the human delegation. None spoke, but their look said everything. Some showed pity for the humans who had dared to speak up. Others showed fear about what would happen next. But a few, just a few, showed something different. They showed the look of people who were tired of being afraid. Back on their ship, the three humans sat in silence for a long time. They're going to make an example of us, Daewon said finally. Probably, Teho agreed. Our 12 ships against their thousands, Sora said. It's not much of a fight. Teho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 17 human worlds were going about their daily lives. Families were having dinner, children were playing, people were falling in love and building homes and dreaming of the future. No, he said quietly. It's not much of a fight at all. But he was thinking about something else. He was thinking about what the Velkari didn't know about humans. What none of the galaxy knew. They were about to find out what happened when you cornered a species that had clawed its way to the stars from a small, dangerous world where everything tried to kill them. The peace talks were over. What came next would be something entirely different. General Yunji Seo stood in the underground command center beneath Seoul. The room was dark except for the glow of hundreds of screens. Each screen showed a different part of the galaxy. Each one showed human ships that were not supposed to exist. Ma'am, all units report ready, said Dr. Wu Jin-han, the lead weapons researcher. Protocol Broken Arrow is active. General SEO nodded. For 5 years, while the galaxy thought humans were weak and new, they had been preparing for this day. They had built ships in secret. They had developed weapons that broke no galactic laws but would shock everyone who saw them. Commander Subin John, are your special teams in position? She asked. Yes, ma'am. We have teams on every major Velkari. Base. They're ready to move. General Seo looked at the main screen. It showed the new Busan system, where Captain Lee's small fleet faced the Velkari ships. The Velkari commander had just sent another message demanding surrender. Time to show them what humans really are, she said. Execute protocol Broken Arrow. Across the galaxy, things began to happen very quickly. In the new Busan system, Captain Lee received a coded message. He smiled for the first time in hours. All ships, this is Captain Lee, he said on the radio. New orders. Prepare for combat. Sir, his first officer said, we're still outnumbered. Not anymore, Lee replied. Around New Busan, space began to shimmer. What had looked like empty space was not empty at all. Human ships had been hiding. There, using new stealth technology. Ships that looked like space rocks powered up their engines. Ships that looked like gas clouds revealed themselves as massive carriers. In 10 seconds, the Velkari ships went from facing 8 human ships to facing 80. The Velkari commander, War Master Kethral, stared at his screens in shock. Where did they come from? He demanded. His officers had no answer. Sir, one of them said, these ships, they're not in our database. We've never seen designs like this. Impossible. Humans have been in space for only 40 years. Sir, I'm reading weapon signatures that match nothing in our records. War Master Kethral was confused, but he was not stupid. He knew when he was outnumbered. All ships retreat to safe distance, contact the fleet command. But when he tried to contact the Velkari fleet command, no one answered. The reason was simple. There was no fleet command anymore. In the Velkari capital system, Admiral Hyunwoo Choi watched as his plan unfolded perfectly. The Velkari had built their empire on fear and superior technology. They had never imagined that someone might be smarter than them. Sir, all Velkari command centers are down, reported Intelligence Officer Ji Young-kung. Our cyber teams have taken control of their communication networks. Any resistance? None, sir. They never expected anyone to hack their systems from the inside. What the Velkari didn't know was that humans had been working in their empire for years. Human merchants and researchers had been mapping their systems, learning their weaknesses and preparing for this moment. Phase 2, Admiral Choi ordered. Across Velkari space, human teams that had been hiding as workers and traders revealed themselves. They were not merchants. They were soldiers. Elite soldiers who had been preparing for this day. Velkari military bases found their defenses shut down from the inside. Communication centers went dark. Supply lines were cut. But the humans did not kill anyone. They simply disabled everything and waited. In the Velkari capital, High Regent Vexthara sat in her throne room, trying to understand what was happening. Reports came in from across the empire. Every report was the same. Human ships appearing, where there should be none. Human teams taking control of Velkari installations. Human technology that was far beyond what anyone had imagined. How is this possible? She demanded of her advisors. Humans are primitives. They have no technology, no experience, no power. My regent, said her military commander, we may have been mistaken about human capabilities. Get me Admiral. Choi, she ordered, I want to speak to whoever is in charge of this. The screen in her throne room lit up. Admiral Choi's face appeared. He looked calm, almost bored. High Regent, he said politely. You wanted to speak with me? What is the meaning of this attack? She demanded. Attack? Admiral Choi raised an eyebrow. We haven't attacked anyone. We've simply repositioned our forces. Your forces? You have no forces. You have 12 ships. We have the ships we showed you, Admiral Choi corrected. That's not the same thing as the ships we have. Vexithara felt something she had not felt in decades. Fear. What do you want? She asked. I want you to listen very carefully, Admiral Choi said. Every Velkari ship in human space has been disabled. Not destroyed. Disabled. Every Velkari base in human territory has been taken over. Not bombed. Taken over. Every Velkari officer has been captured, not killed, captured. He leaned forward. Do you understand what this means? You're threatening the Velkari Empire. No, Admiral Choi said quietly. I'm giving you a choice. The same choice you gave us. He stood up, and the camera followed him to a window. Outside, Vexathara could see human ships surrounding the Velkari capital. Hundreds of them. Ships that looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before. You have 3 days, Admiral Choi said. 3 days to withdraw from all occupied worlds. 3 days to release all enslaved populations, 3 days to return all stolen resources. And if we refuse? Admiral Choi smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Then you'll discover what happens when you corner a species that fought its way up from a world where everything tried to kill them. He paused. High Regent, your empire controls thousands of worlds. But you've never fought a war against someone who understands war the way humans do. You've never faced an enemy that gets stronger when things get worse. You've never met a species that would rather die fighting than live on their knees. The screen went dark. Vexathara sat in her throne, staring at the blank screen. Around her, alarms were ringing. Reports were coming in from across the empire. The humans had not just surprised them, they had completely outmaneuvered them. My regent, her advisor said carefully, perhaps we should consider their offer. Never, she said. Gather the Grand Fleet. All of it. We will crush these humans and show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the Velkari Empire. Yes, my regent. But as the advisor left, Vexathara looked out at the human ships surrounding her capital. They were not moving. They were not attacking. They were just waiting, like predators who had already won and were giving their prey one last chance to surrender. For the first time in her life, Vexathara wondered if the Velkari Empire had made a terrible mistake. In his command center, Admiral Choi watched the Velkari ships beginning to gather. Intelligence reports showed them calling in fleets from across the galaxy. Soon they would have the largest military force ever assembled. Sir, Ji-young said, are you sure about this? They're going to come at us with everything they have. I'm counting on it, Admiral Choi replied. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. He looked at the screen showing human fleets across the galaxy. Ships that had been built in secret, using technology that combined the best ideas from dozens of species. Ships crewed by humans who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Besides, he said, we're not the same species that crawled out of caves a few thousand years ago. We're the species that looked at the stars and decided to make them ours. The trap was set. Now they would see if the Velkari were stupid enough to walk into it. The Crimson Nebula was a cloud of red gas and dust floating in empty space. It was beautiful and deadly, with radiation that could kill most living things. It was also the perfect place for a battle. Captain Sung-ho Bei stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Indomitable. Around him, his crew worked quietly and efficiently. They knew what was coming. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Captain, his sensor operator said, Velkari fleet detected. Distance 1,000,000 kilometers and closing. Bei looked at the tactical display. What he saw would have terrified anyone else. Over 10,000 Velkari ships were approaching, the largest military force ever assembled in the galaxy's history. Ships that were individually more powerful than anything humans had built before today. How many ships do we have? Bei asked. 3,000, sir. Good odds, Bei said calmly. His crew looked at him like he was insane. 3,000 against 10,000 was not good odds. It was suicide. But Captain Bei was not insane. He knew something the Velkari didn't. Dr. Hai-Ri Lim, he called to the ship's psychological warfare specialist. Begin broadcasting. Dr. Lim activated her equipment. Across the galaxy, beings watched as the human fleet took position in the Crimson Nebula. They watched as the massive Velkari fleet approached, like a metal storm. This is Captain Sung-ho Bei of the Human Colonial Defense Force. His voice went out across all frequencies. To the Velkari fleet, You still have time to turn around. We don't want to destroy you, but we will if we have to, the Velkari response came from their fleet commander, Admiral Zethmore. Human captain, you are outnumbered more than 3-1. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Admiral, Bay replied, you're making the same mistake everyone makes about humans. You think numbers matter more than skill. Numbers are all that matter in war. Then you've never fought humans before. The battle began when the Velkari opened fire. 10,000 ships shooting at once should have wiped out the human fleet in seconds. But the human ships moved like they were alive. They twisted and spun through space, dodging weapons fire that should have been impossible to avoid. The Velkari had better weapons and stronger shields. But humans had something else: experience. Every human ship captain had studied the great battles of human history. They knew how Nelson had defeated larger fleets at Trafalgar. They knew how Alexander had broken the Persian Empire. They knew how Hannibal had crossed the Alps. They knew that the bigger army doesn't always win. All ships, execute Plan Alpha, Captain Bay ordered. The human fleet split into small groups. Instead of fighting as one big fleet, they became dozens of small fleets. Each group attacked a different part of the Velkari formation. The Velkari had never seen anything like it. Their ships were designed to fight in large formations, all together. They didn't know how to handle dozens of small attacks happening at the same time. Sir, reported Commander Dong-hyun Park from his assault ship, their formation is breaking up. They're trying to respond to too many threats at once. Good, Bay replied. Phase 2, target their command ships. This was the key to the human plan. Every fleet needs leaders. Take out the leaders, and the fleet becomes confused. Human ships dove through the Velkari formation like sharks. They ignored the smaller ships and went straight for the big command vessels. These ships were heavily protected, but humans had studied Velkari designs for years. They knew where the weak spots were. One by one, Velkari command ships went dark. Not destroyed, humans had weapons that could shut down enemy ships without killing the crews. It was harder to do, but humans had learned that keeping enemies alive was often more useful than killing them. Admiral Zethmore watched his fleet falling apart and could not understand how it was happening. Sir, we've lost contact with over half our command ships, his aide reported. How? We outnumber them 3-1. Sir, they're not fighting like we expected. They're not trying to destroy our ships. They're disabling them. Why would they do that? The aide looked confused. I don't know, sir. It's actually harder to disable a ship than to destroy it. Admiral Zethmore realized something that chilled him to the bone. The humans were not fighting for their lives. They were not desperate. They were in complete control of this battle. They were showing off. By the time the battle was half over, the galaxy was watching in shock. Species that had been terrified of the Velkari for thousands of years saw their mighty fleet being taken apart by a primitive human force. This is impossible, whispered the Hydrian ambassador watching from his refugee ship. They're doing it, said a Silmari survivor, her crystal body ringing with excitement. The humans are actually winning. On worlds across the galaxy, beings who had given up hope began to believe again. But the battle was not over. Admiral Zethmore still had thousands of ships. He made a desperate decision. All ships, ramming speed, he ordered. If we can't outfight them, we'll crash into them. It was a suicide order, but it might work. The remaining Velkari ships charged directly at the human fleet, their engines burning at maximum power. They tried to ram the human ships. This was when the humans showed what they were really made of. Instead of running away, the human ships charged back. Captain Bay's voice came over all human frequencies. Remember who we are. We're the species that looked at 10-foot predators and decided to hunt them. We're the people who saw mountains and decided to climb them. We're the race that looked at the ocean and decided to cross it. Human ships met the Velkari charge head-on. But at the last second, they did something impossible. They spun away, dodging the collision by inches, and fired their weapons at point-blank range. It was like a deadly dance. Velkari ships missed their targets and found themselves disabled by weapons they never saw coming. When the battle ended, over 6,000 Velkari ships were floating dead in space. Their crews were alive, but their ships were powerless. The human fleet had lost less than 200 ships. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as Captain Bay opened a communication channel to the defeated Velkari fleet. "Admiral Zethmore, do you surrender?" The Velkari admiral's voice was broken. "How? How did you do this?" "We learned from the best teachers in the universe," Bay replied. "What teachers?" "Our enemies. Every species that ever tried to kill us made us stronger. Every predator that hunted us taught us how to hunt. Every natural disaster that hit our world taught us how to survive." He paused. "Admiral, we're going to send rescue ships to pick up your crews. They'll be treated well and returned to Velkari space. This war is over." "Why?" Zethmore asked. "Why not kill us?" "Because," Captain Bay said simply, "that's not who we are. We fight to protect, not to destroy." Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The mighty Velkari Empire had been defeated. Not destroyed, not wiped out, but defeated so completely that they had no choice but to surrender. And the humans had done it while showing mercy to their enemies. For the first time in galactic history, a species had proven that being strong didn't mean being cruel. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Battle of the Crimson Nebula, President Bo-Ra Han stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 300 species filled the Great Hall on New Harmony Station, the replacement for the old Harmony Point. The hall looked different now. Instead of the Velkari sitting on a high platform looking down at everyone else, all the seats were at the same level. Every species, large or small, had the same sized space. "Fellow citizens of the galaxy," President Han began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall and to billions of beings watching across space, "we gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals." In the front row, former High Regent Vexithara sat with the other Velkari representatives. She looked smaller than she had before, but not broken. The humans had kept their word. After the surrender, Velkari prisoners had been treated well and returned home safely. Beside her sat Ambassador Tae-ho Kim, now called First Speaker of the Reformed Council. He had been elected by all the species together, the first leader chosen by everyone instead of imposed by the strongest. "The old galaxy was built on fear," President Han continued. "The strong ruled the weak. The many served the few. Justice was whatever the biggest army said it was." She paused, looking around the hall. "Today we build something new. Today we prove that intelligence is stronger than force, that cooperation achieves more than domination, that the best way to rule is not to rule at all but to serve." Dr. Sohra Park, now the head of the Interspecies Cooperation Institute, watched from the observation deck. She had spent the last 6 months working with representatives from hundreds of species, writing the document that would change everything. The Terran Accords were not just laws. They were a completely new way of thinking about civilization. The first principle of the Terran Accords, President Han read from the document, is that every thinking being has the right to live free from fear. No species may threaten another. No government may harm its own people. No individual may be enslaved or oppressed. Around the hall, beings who had lived under tyranny for generations began to weep. The Hydrians, who had been driven from their water worlds, felt hope for the first time in months. The Silmari survivors hummed with joy, their crystal bodies creating music that filled the air. The second principle is that all species are equal before the law. A small species with one world has the same rights as a large species with 1,000 worlds. Power comes not from the size of your fleet, but from the consent of those you serve. Former Admiral Zethmore, sitting with the Velkari delegation, shook his head in wonder. He had spent his entire life believing that might made right. Now he was seeing something he had never imagined, a government based on justice instead of strength. The third principle is that resources belong to those who inhabit the worlds where they are found. No species may take what belongs to another. Trade must be fair. Agreements must be honored. This was the principle that had started the war. The Velkari had tried to take resources from smaller species by force. Now those resources were being returned, along with compensation for the damage that had been done. President Han set down the document and looked directly at the camera that would carry her words across the galaxy. Some of you are afraid of humans. You have seen our ships and our weapons. You have watched us defeat the greatest military force in galactic history. You wonder if we will become the new tyrants. She smiled. Let me tell you what humans really want. We want to explore. We want to learn. We want to build things that have never been built before. We want to solve problems that have never been solved. We want to reach for the stars and bring everyone with us. She stood up. We don't want to rule you. We want to work with you. We don't want your submission. We want your friendship. We don't want your fear. We want your trust. The hall erupted in applause that went on for 5 full minutes. After the ceremony, Ambassador Kim walked through the station's observation deck with Vex Thara. Outside the windows, ships from hundreds of species floated peacefully together. Velkari ships worked alongside human vessels. Hydrian waterships traded with Silmari crystal carriers. I still don't understand, Vex Thara said. You could have destroyed us completely. You could have taken over the galaxy. Why didn't you? Kim thought for a moment. Because that's not who we are. But you're so strong, so advanced. Your technology, your tactics, your soldiers, are tools, Kim interrupted. Just tools. What matters is how you use them. They stopped at a large window that showed the space around the station. In the distance, construction crews were building new ships. Not warships, exploration vessels and research stations and colony ships. On our world, Kim said, we have a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. The stronger you are, the more you have a duty to protect others. Vex Thara was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, what happens now? Now we build, Kim said simply. We explore the galaxy together. We solve the problems that no single species could solve alone. We reach for things that seemed impossible. And if someone threatens this new peace, Kim's expression grew serious. Then they'll discover that humans are very good at protecting the things they care about. But he smiled again quickly. However, I don't think that will be a problem. The galaxy has seen what happens when you give people freedom instead of fear. Most beings prefer to build rather than destroy. 1 year later, the galaxy was transformed. The Hydrian homeworld had been restored, its oceans refilled with water freely given by worlds that had too much. The Silmari had grown new crystal forests, more beautiful than the ones that had been destroyed. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Scientific discoveries were shared among all species. Art and music and literature spread across the stars. Wars became almost unknown. When disputes arose, they were settled by negotiation and law, not by violence. And at the center of it all, humanity continued to do what humans did best: explore, discover, and push the boundaries of what was possible. Captain Sung Ho Bei, now an admiral, stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Horizons. His crew was mixed. Humans, Velkari, Hydrians, Silmari, and dozens of other species all working together. Admiral, his science officer reported, we're detecting signals from the far galaxy. It looks like there might be other civilizations out there. Admiral Bei smiled. Then we'd better go introduce ourselves, set course for the unknown. Behind them, the civilized galaxy continued its work of building something better than what had come before. And ahead of them lay infinite possibilities. The peace talks had collapsed. But from that collapse had come something far better than peace. They had built hope. And hope, as humans had learned long ago, was the strongest force in the universe. Epilogue. 5 years later, Ambassador Kim, now an old man, walked through the gardens of New Harmony Station with his granddaughter. The little girl was fascinated by the different beings they met. A crystal Silmari who sang her a lullaby, a blue Hydrian who showed her water dancing, a reformed Velkari who taught her to count in 4 different languages. Grandfather, the little girl asked, were you really there when everything changed? I was, Kim said, lifting her up to see over the crowd. Were you scared? Kim thought about it. Terrified, but sometimes being scared is the first step toward being brave. Will I ever have to be brave like that? Kim looked out at the peaceful station, at the ships from dozens of worlds working together, at the children of different species playing together in ways their parents never could have imagined. I hope not, he said, but if you do, I know you'll do the right thing. How do you know? Because, Kim said, you're human, and humans don't give up. Ever. In the distance, a new exploration fleet was preparing to launch. Their mission? To find other civilizations and invite them to join the growing community of species that had learned to live together in peace. The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear. It was guided by hope, and that made all the difference.